Coogs house. And a night where Houston's got a single score outscoring the other team at halftime. It's an interesting night to be talking about the backups and the bench players, but Houston dominates Jackson State with that depth.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen today, your first listen post-game, your first listen the next morning, or whatever it may be. And thanking the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the world. We also want to thank the everydayers out there and the all-access everydayers that signed up through Supercast. If you want to know more, go to lockedoncougs.supercast.com to be an all-access everydayer. Get a little bit extra content in your system on all things Houston Cougars. Now, I want to talk about Houston beating Jackson State like they're supposed to, 80-38. I want to talk some about the depth that showed off in this game. We will talk about some of those concerns, including whatever comes out about Khalifa Sakho and what might have happened to his knee or whatever. It looked bad initially. We'll see how things go. If things come out during the show live, you'll get a live reaction. That's part of the fun. We'll also do some nightcaps, tip of the caps kind of stuff to the folks for big-time performances. But, man, this game was great to see some of the bench guys get loose. Isiah Harwell had 20. Chase McCarty had just 3, but had some big-time hustle plays in the first half. But Ramon Walker, a seasoned veteran that he is, in a lot of ways feels almost like a glorified assistant coach that gets to play some because he's really a culture guy, a big-time culture guy for Houston that gets to come in and play in all these games. In a moment in the first half where Houston kind of looked lifeless and like they needed energy, and admittedly, Houston's at this interesting spot in their schedule where that might make some sense. They just played Florida State. They played 3 Power 4 teams or Power 4 caliber teams in Las Vegas. They've got Jackson State, they've got New Orleans, and then they play Arkansas on the 20th. And it's like all things heading towards that Arkansas game. And Houston needed some energy. And in that moment, they threw out Chase McCarty and Ramon Walker, and Ramon Walker is flying around doing his Ramon Walker diving on the floor kind of stuff and knocks out a big 3 as the ball gets swung to him. It's like, okay, we're awake. We're here to play basketball now. And Houston kind of never looked back after that. Now, I know this game was never actually in that much doubt, but I would point out that head coach of Jackson State, Mo Williams, is very invested in the Houston staff, wants to copy a lot of the defensive schemes and schema from Houston. They mentioned several times on the broadcast, if you didn't hear, that he has been to Houston practices and watches what they do and wants to absorb like a sponge all that he can from Samson. I think those initial couple of punches out of Jackson State were evidence that that's what he's built. Like, he clearly knew what he was preparing for better than many coaches would in this instance, right? And shouts to Mo Williams for doing his homework on that. And honestly, obviously, you and I agree. If you're going to base your stuff on one program, you ought to be that program, right? Like, Houston ought to be the program people are going to base their things off of. And my joke, people commenting now because I don't like the word I used, schema. I don't know. That's live show. We're going live here. I also can't hit a cough button quite as quickly live. So I will say that those first couple minutes was like, okay, Houston's down 9-8 or whatever. Like, why are we awake yet? That will happen, these kinds of games. But having guys like Ramon Walker coming off the bench and be that Energizer Bunny go a long way. And it frankly is what Houston's always kind of had. One of the ultimate Energizer Bunnies was Jamal Shedd, who sat there in the front row tonight, which is a funny thing to see, visiting from, I guess they say they had a quad contusion. So he's not in Toronto playing. But I thought the Ramon Walker 3 was a big-time play early. I thought there were a couple of Kingston steals early that felt big as well. This game, start to finish, didn't once things started rolling for Houston, it didn't feel like all that much of a contest. I think someone in the comments here says it was a great scrimmage. But there is interesting, like, getting your depth guys going, getting Chase McCarty 18 valuable minutes, Isiah Harwell 24 valuable minutes. Mercy Miller played 14 valuable minutes at a big-time dunk in a way that we haven't really seen him have that kind of a play at Houston. He caught on the left wing, the quick jab inside with his right foot, and then took off the left and with a two-handed, like thunder kind of, not like a speedster getting to the rim quickly. Like he really rattled the rim some with that dunk. And we haven't seen that out of him. We haven't seen, frankly, Ramon Walker shoot a lot as of late. We haven't seen these kinds of plays, getting them to getting them to try and do these things, or like impact the game in these ways. Has certainly it's certainly been interesting to see growth in this game in those ways. I also think as we look at like the big storyline to go away from this with the depth will be that Jacob McFarland got in for the final 5 minutes of the basketball game. He had a couple of rebounds. He had a steal. But ultimately, when you look at like the path that Jacob McFarland has taken to get to this point, that he's even in uniform after all the injuries and all the things he's been through is pretty remarkable. Great to see him in on the action there. And I really, really, I like to see, I like to see these kind of bench impacts in these games because, like, we know if Chris Sinak played 36 minutes, he'd get a bajillion points and rebounds. He played just 17, had 5 and 2 tonight, and I get that was a very mundane night for him. He also has minutes cut in half because they were up by so many points. Jojo Tugler, for what's worth, played 19 minutes, but not because of foul trouble. He just played a foul-free 19 minutes, and that's a big deal. I feel like that's an interesting way for things to go on, right? Like, did he get quicker as a level of competition thing? I guess we'll see more in the next couple of weeks. But 0 fouls in 19 minutes for him would be a big improvement in it, and certainly a stretch in the right direction, to say the least. Obviously, Kingston Flemings in his 19 minutes was pretty impactful. I feel like a big thing for Kingston, frankly, might have been much like seeing some of those depth guys play an impact role. Seeing Kingston Flemings play in the second half. He took a bad spill in the first half, and it looked like a headshot as he's diving for a ball on a bad pass out of Chris. He's going for it. He doesn't see the defender. He runs smack into him in face, face first, and he's rolling around on the ground and all kinds of chaos. And it felt like a bad head injury at first, and he took his time off. And I, in my own background, everyone has their impacts or like their relationships with this, but like you're supposed to take us like a certain like amount of real time minutes, not game minutes, but real time minutes off after potential head injury to see kind of as a snow globe gets shaken up how the dust settles. And I feel like they did that for the duration of the end of the first half and halftime, and then he goes out to start the second half and looks back to being himself. And frankly, that might be a strong thing for Houston going forward, that he didn't get a big bad head injury there. That would have been pretty bad given the start to the year he's had so far. We can talk more about Emanuel Sharp and his big scoring night. He had 23 points in 24 minutes on just 11 shots from the field. At one point, Houston had I think Houston had 40, but he had 19 and Jackson State had 16 for a period of the start of the second half. I was like, okay, he's going to outscore Jackson State on his own. Emmanuel being hot is a great thing. That's a great thing for Houston, obviously. I think what's great for him in Houston, though, is that he was 5 of 8 from behind the arc. He's kind of finding that rhythm. Yes, opponent and level of opponent all is a factor here, but finding his rhythm is important. Now, as you look at all of these different, people playing a role in this win, obviously you beat Jackson State, who's a rebuilding basketball program from Mo Williams, and we're being nice about it when we call it that, 80-38, and you get all these different guys chipping in a bunch of different ways. It's just nice to see it diversified across the scorebook. You've seen Emmanuel and Kingston lead the way. You've seen Kingston and Chris lead the way. You've seen Emmanuel and Jojo lead the way. You haven't really seen it spread out evenly across. And even in today's game, really, you had 2 guys hit 20 points, but I felt like the effort was much more evenly spread out across. And that's a fun thing to get to see for the Houston Cougars. One thing that was not so fun to get to see was Khalifa Sanko's injury. And that, amongst other things, I think leads some people to having concerns. So I want to talk more about what that is in just one moment. But first, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Aura Frames, because the holidays are officially here. Means gift giving season, finding the right gift is upon us. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is a gift that delivers every single time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, new toddlers, anyone who loves photos, for an endless supply of photos in one single frame for a limited time. Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com. Get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's Aura, AURA, frames.com, promo code COLLEGE. Deals exclusive to listeners and frames without fast. So order yours now to get in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms do apply. Parker Ainsworth locked on Coogs here. Talking about Houston beating Jackson State, 38, beating them 80-38. And I would point out that, like, there are other concerns here, and there's no such thing as a perfect game. And Samson was quick to point out in the, was it the halftime media, whatever you want to call that, not scrum, it's just him and one media person on his way to halftime. But when they asked him about what he thought about the slow start of the half, where he was like, hey, they've got a really good three-point shooter, and we didn't cover him from three for the first 3 minutes. That's not a great start to the basketball game. And starting slow can be a problem, and slow offensive points can be a problem for Houston. Sure. In this one, though, I think the biggest concern thus far is going to be what to make of Khalifa Sakho's injury. Now, Khalifa Sakho was standing under the rim-ish when Isiah Harwell attacked the basket. Great attack by Isiah Harwell. When he hit the floor, Harwell fell into the knee and leg of Khalifa Sakho. And so we're still trying to figure out exactly what that injury is. Nothing has been reported online as I'm looking at it as the time of this recording for the folks listening after the fact. But as we sit here live, we don't have anything down too far. Frankly, a lot of the news as you scroll across is all Sharon Moore. That's a whole separate news story. I will say, though, that if you look at what that impact is for Houston, an extended absence for Khalifa Sakho, I think we're seeing would be a big deal for Houston. He's truly Houston's second big. He's the first big off the bench. And for what it's worth, I don't know that you want to do a whole lot of extended time in Big 12 play with Chris Sinak as a small ball 5 and like Chase McCarty at the small ball 4. And so what Sakho's injury is will kind of loom large in the sense that you need a backup big, especially when your starting center is Jojo Tugler, who seems to be consistently in foul trouble, right? He wasn't in foul trouble tonight. We talked about that. That was a good thing from tonight. However, he does seem to be in foul trouble more often than not. And while we're hoping we grow out of that at some point, Jojo, in the meantime, it would be great to have a backup center. And Khalifa Sakho's done a great job at being that guy so far for Houston. I thought Sakho's been pretty strong on the season as a whole, and seeing him go down was kind of rough in that instance. Now, as I scroll through looking for that and seeing if there can be something on that, I'm not seeing a whole lot yet reported. I will say as well as Houston's other problems and fixing other problems, they did have 19 assists tonight. They moved the ball much better. We talked about that being a problem in previous games. They did rebound the ball 42 times tonight, 18 of which were on the offensive side of it. We talked about that being a problem before. Obviously, some of that goes to the level of opponent and all of those kinds of things, but those things need to be kind of figured out by this point. Houston shot the ball all right from behind the arc, 11 for 33. I would point out some of their more marquee shooters were more of the 11 than not. Look, Houston led this game start to finish. There was no big secret or anything like that in this one. And except for that one stint where it was like, oh man, they hit 3 threes. Now it's 9-8. That's about all Jackson State had, and that's all they're going to have. But in playing these kinds of games, especially between big non-conference games like Florida State or the Players Era NIL Invitational and Arkansas in about 10 days, those kinds of windows are playing these smaller schools with a coaching staff like Mo Williams trying to learn from you and whatever, kind of see a mirrored version of your own defense on the other side. they do function, as someone said in the comments here early up at the top, as a almost controlled scrimmage. And I think that's good for a program when you are identifying things in those early big games, like we mentioned in Las Vegas or Florida State or Auburn, even things you got to fix. You then get these kinds of games to work through them against teams that are trying to compete and win and are different and don't see you at practice every day. And that they, it's a different look and feel. And yes, you do win by a bunch of points and all of that, but ultimately you are working through things. I thought Houston, you saw different points tonight, work through some stuff offensively and kind of find other options. Now, we still haven't quite figured out a way to get Milos Uzan going. And I guess if I'm looking for other, things to be potentially concerned about, I think it's still too early to be concerned about it at all. But Milos Uzan only having 6 points, being 3 of 8 from the field and 0 of 4 from behind the arc is not the Milos we know. Now, I will say I appreciated that once he had missed a few of those threes, he did seem to be attacking the rim with a lot more ferocity. He attacked the rim pretty strong. After that, I feel like, we're still figuring out what Milos is going to fit in with this offense. Kingston Flemings has very much secured that point guard position. Milos is playing off of him in a way that he did not have to play off of LJ Cryer last year or anyone at Oklahoma while he was there. He's kind of finding his fit, so to speak, in a 2-point guard system with Kingston. And honestly, right now it's leaning into more of a auxiliary score, kind of tertiary option. And he's just too far down the totem pole here. And he's frankly too good a shooter, as we saw last year, to be 0 for 4 from 3 in this game. That probably has to do with the kind of looks you're getting as the guy further down the totem pole. You're not in the flow of the offense quite as well. And you got to adjust to getting less shots or less shots up or less of it in your hand, so to speak, but still being able to be effective in that role. We're still seeing Milos grow into that. And for what it's worth, we saw last year when he grew into a new role as the starting point guard at Houston, that it takes some time to do these things, right? I'm not, especially after the way last year went, I'm not worried about things in mid-December. We're not even quite there yet. That can get figured out over the course of gelling and finding roles and all of that. If there are other concerns like injuries, we've mentioned Sakho and something that is a bigger concern you can have in early December. But the things like gelling and finding your rhythm, those you got plenty of time. You don't want to be you don't want to have that figured out right now. You want to be working towards doing your best version of that in March and April. And that's, I think, kind of what Houston's lined up to do. And it's what Samson's done a great job for several years now of doing, right? So I feel like Houston's got things going okay in all of that. I will be interested to see. It's not quite a concern, but if Sakho is down, that is a concern. Does Jacob McFarland earn more minutes a little bit? Is he able to contribute at all? If not, is it said a lot? What does he look like? Or do you just go small? And I don't know how many Big 12 teams you're going to go up against with a small front court lineup. But if there's one coach who could draw up a defense for it, I would bet on it being Kelvin Sampson. Now, I want to talk about some tip the caps kind of things and wrap up the night a little bit real quick. Before we get to any of that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at FanDuel, because it is time to get in on the NFL action, because NFL Sundays can move fast. One big play and suddenly everything can feel different. That's what makes betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. If a receiver gets hot, defense can tighten up, or the momentum flips on a turnover, FanDuel is to jump in on the moment. So if you want to get in and be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, game moves fast, and so can you. Parker Ainsworth locked on Coogs here. And I will say, as far as tip the caps go, if you are new to the program, post-game, we'll give a little tip the cap, not of the cap, however you want to tip the nightcap to people with big-time performances. I want to start off with the bench. We're going to do the entire bench, but if you want to go one by one, Isiah Harwell for 20 points in this one. A quarter of Houston's points come from Isiah Harwell off the bench, a guy that is still look like he's getting his sea legs, so to speak. 8 of 14 from the field. He also had 4 rebounds in this one. Really, really good night from Isiah. And frankly, if he can work his way into that sixth man role, Houston will be much better for it. Isiah was a very talented high school prospect, a 5-star on many recruiting sites and all that before his own injuries in high school. Frankly, had he never been injured, he might have been an even higher ranked prospect coming into Houston. And it's great to see him get his shine on a night like this. And hopefully that sparks something down the rest of the way. Another tip the cap, nightcap to Emanuel Sharp, who finished with 23 points, but as I mentioned earlier, at one point did have more points than the entire opponent. Pretty big night for him scoring and pretty efficient night as well. Big tip of the cap to Jojo Tugler, both for nightcap, Jojo Tugler, both for having no fouls in his 19 minutes. He had one of the more impressive dunks as well for one of his 2 field goals. He had 4 rebounds. He had, let me make sure I got this right. He had 4 rebounds and an assist. And I really think that like his defensive presence in terms of like shot deterrence is hard to calculate. It's hard to measure, but having Jojo there in the middle is throwing off so much of an offense that his defensive presence is a powerful thing that's hard to quantify. Impressive night out of Jojo, especially that he did it all in just 19 minutes. Another tip of the cap here to Chase McCarty. I thought McCarty came in off the bench in the first half, had a pretty strong first half. Pretty good hustle plays, diving on the floor, falling, going after loose balls, all those kinds of things. And then one final nightcap, as we mentioned earlier, to Ramon Walker. Ramon had 6 points in this one, but I really think that when he came in after a couple energy plays and knocked on a 3 to get things going, that was kind of Houston's wake-up moment in this basketball. If you got your own nightcap of sorts, tell us in the comments down below. Who are you giving a nightcap to this evening after Houston beats Jackson State 80-38? Now check into the channel tomorrow. Gonna have a little bit more content up for you as well on transfer portal football league kind of stuff. And for the everyday all access members, make sure you go to lockedoncougs.supercast.com for extra content for subscribers each and every day. Going to be a part of that club, everyday all access club. Go to lockedoncougs.supercast.com to sign up today. Locked On Cougs is primarily Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.